In this optimization guide, I'm going to show you the absolutely best possible video settings in Hogwarts Legacy to get the highest FPS and best visibility. As with all of my optimization guides, I performed various in-game benchmarks across varying locations throughout the world of Hogwarts on 2 different systems to show you the actual performance impact of every single setting. Additionally, I provide side-by-side comparisons of each setting to help you decide between the best possible trade-off between visual fidelity and performance when playing Hogwarts Legacy. Use the timestamps to navigate to the settings that you're most interested in, and don't miss my best recommended settings for both a high-end and mid-range system in the end of this video. And with that, let's actually begin with a bunch of settings outside of the game that I've seen various sources argue that they might or might not improve performance and in-game smoothness. The first such option is hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. You can find this by searching for graphics settings. Now initially I was also fooled into thinking that this option had a huge impact on in-game performance. You can see that it seems like I gained almost 90 FPS by simply enabling this option. Now, upon closer inspection of my settings, I realized that I was no longer able to actually disable Nvidia Reflex low latency, and additionally I noticed that the Nvidia frame generation was enabled, even though I didn't enable any of the upscalers. So the seemingly great improvement in performance simply came from Nvidia frame generation that interlaced a fake frame in between 2 actual frames, and after restarting the game this option would disable as it should and performance will come down to normal levels. So when we then look at the actual performance with hardware accelerated GPU scheduling enabled and disabled, we can see that on my primary system that is running on a 1440p display, I'm in fact losing performance, roughly 3.5%, whereas on my secondary system there is basically no measurable difference at all. Now unfortunately there are some games that do struggle with hardware accelerated GPU scheduling enabled, and therefore I would generally recommend to leave this disabled unless you are experiencing extreme stutters. Another tip that I've seen a few people mention is to increase the shader cache size in the Nvidia control panel to unlimited. However, from my testing, once again I didn't find any difference with this option on unlimited or leaving it on the default. Speaking of shaders, every time you load into the game, shaders unfortunately have to be recalculated. Now, I really hope that this is a bug and it will be fixed with a future update, because it seems to be rather redundant. You see, many people argue that it's actually important to restart the game after changing any of the graphical settings in order for the shader to be able to recalculate depending on the settings that you've chosen. From my testing, however, there is absolutely no difference in graphical fidelity or performance immediately after changing some settings and after restarting the game. So don't worry, if you change any of your graphical settings, you don't have to restart the game in order for the shaders to recalculate. Now diving into the game, under display options we have window mode. Unfortunately, we cannot run the game on native full screen, we can only select between windowed full screen and windowed, and as expected both of these options perform exactly identical. Hopefully windowed full screen has slightly better input lag than windowed, which is why I would recommend this. For anti-aliasing there are 3 different modes available: TAA Low, High and Nvidia DLAA. Unfortunately, TAA Low introduces this very ugly fringing around objects that are moving, which becomes painfully apparent when panning around. However, this does not happen on TAA High or Nvidia DLAA. Performance-wise, I'm losing only 2 to 3% on my primary system, however my secondary system really is struggling with anti-aliasing. As you can see, I'm dropping around 10% in performance by simply enabling TAA High. So my recommendation would be to use TAA High on a more high-end system and Nvidia DLAA on a more low-end system. In terms of upscaling, there are actually a plethora of options available in Hogwarts Legacy. However, from all of my benchmarks, I was not able to find a single upscale filter that actually improved performance. Ironically, each of these upscalers, even though they actually run the game at a much lower native resolution, ended up producing worse performance than simply disabling the upscaling altogether. When enabling Nvidia Reflex low latency, I saw an ever so slight boost in performance on my primary system and virtually no difference whatsoever on my secondary machine. However, inexplicably, when using on plus boost, I saw a roughly 18% drop in performance on my primary system and a 9% drop on my secondary system. So this is definitely something that you should stay away unless I guess you have a 4090. Personally, I'm no big fan of VSync or capping my frame rate, which is why I leave this disabled and uncapped. As expected, when decreasing our field of view, we actually slightly gain performance in Hogwarts Legacy, roughly 5% at -20 FOV and 2% on -10 FOV on my primary system, and 3 and 1.5% respectively on my secondary system. On the other hand, going to a higher field of view slightly decreases performance on my primary system and has virtually no effect on my secondary PC. Frankly, I absolutely hate motion blur, chromatic aberration and film grain, and would always recommend to leave those disabled. On the other hand, depth of field actually adds quite the cinematic feel to the game, especially in cutscenes, which is why I would leave this enabled. Now, after hours of benchmarking different graphics options for this video, I inevitably got very hungry. Sadly, us real-life muggles lack the ability to quickly conjure a savory meal out of thin air, but luckily the sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh, works almost like magic by delivering healthy and savory meals right to your doorstep. Now, I personally regularly struggle to decide what to cook after a long day at work, and I would much rather spend my free time on new awesome content for you guys than buying food. With HelloFresh, you don't have to be a wizard in order to prepare an absolutely delicious meal. And what's even more, they are not only cheaper than your regular takeout, but also definitely 100% more healthy. So skip the planning and grocery shopping and instead start gaming with a healthy meal from HelloFresh. Use the link at the top of the description to save more than $60 on your first delivery plus free shipping, and try HelloFresh today. Again, thanks for HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video, and let's move on to graphics options. Effects quality becomes important when it comes to particle effects. We can clearly see that the quality of particles that are emitted when attacking this dummy here is steadily increasing with higher options. Additionally, particles embedded in this kind of fog in the astronomy wing has more and more details. Now, increasing this option to medium doesn't significantly affect performance in-game, only roughly 1 or 2% on both of the systems that I've tested, whereas on high I'm already losing roughly 5 to 10 FPS on these two systems. Finally, I would definitely recommend against using Ultra unless you really don't mind about performance, because here I'm seeing a 20 and 23% performance drop on my systems. Material quality has virtually no effect on performance in Hogwarts Legacy, and I also struggle to find any comparison shots that showed the improvement of materials or their quality when increasing this option from low to ultra. Fog quality, on the other hand, does have both a measurable performance impact and significantly affects the visual fidelity of scenes with fog. You can see that the resolution of the fog itself is increased with the higher options. However, this kind of dancing around unfortunately is not going to be resolved even with fog at ultra quality. Performance-wise, I'm not leaving too much on the table on my primary system, whereas on my second system I wouldn't go above medium, as the 6 or 12% FPS penalty is definitely too much for this effect. Sky quality, interestingly, once again has absolutely no impact on performance on both of the systems that I tested this, and visually we can see that the resolution of clouds actually does increase quite significantly when increasing this option, so because there is no performance penalty, I would recommend to leave this on ultra. Foliage quality, on the other hand, has a huge impact on performance on anything higher than medium. I'm getting 7 to 10% FPS penalty on my primary system on high and ultra, and 12 to 16% on my second system. Visually, the difference between these presets is mainly the density of grass on the ground, and clearly the ultra preset also increases the resolution of leaves on trees. Personally, I do think that the performance penalty is just a little bit too high, and therefore I wouldn't go beyond medium. Before I continue, I'd like to mention that producing these kinds of videos is extremely time consuming and stressful, because I need to try to push them out as soon as a game releases. So if you like this effort, then smash that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Post-processing quality, as far as I understand, mainly pertains to these post-processing effects that are found under the Display Options tab, so motion blur, depth of field, chromatic aberration, and film grain. The performance impact of these different presets when having all post-processing effects enabled are shown on screen right now, and you can see that anything beyond medium has a very severe impact on performance on both of my systems. Frankly, I'd argue that even the 4.5% performance dip on the secondary system is too much to deal with, so unless you have a high-end system, leave this on low. The difference in the varying shadow quality presets can be seen on screen right now, and you can see that the shadows actually do become much higher resolved when going from medium to high. Unfortunately, high and ultra do have quite a significant impact on performance. We're talking 3 and 5% on my primary system and about 10% on my secondary system. So on a high-end system you can leave this on ultra, whereas on a low-end system you'll probably want to stick to medium. Texture quality, curiously, did not significantly affect performance in Hogwarts Legacy. A visual comparison reveals that increasing this option from low to medium probably enables anisotropic filtering, which makes that textures viewed at an angle are higher resolved. At the same time, when increasing the texture resolution preset, we can see that the memory consumption steadily increases. So if you're a bit short on memory, then you should definitely leave this on medium, but if you have a lot of VRAM, say more than 12 GB, you can leave it on ultra. The view distance quality primarily affects the minimum range at which a lower LOD object is being shown. So if you have this on a low setting, then towers or trees in the background might turn into extremely low polygon versions of that object. Interestingly, I'm seeing a larger performance penalty on my primary system than on my secondary system when increasing this option from low to medium, going all the way up to 20% performance dip on the ultra preset. Now, if you're struggling with performance in this game, then this would probably be one of the prime options to leave on low. On the other hand, if you have a few FPS to spare, then leave this on medium. Population quality is said to affect the quality of non-essential NPCs and creatures in the world. Honestly, I didn't find any instance where this actually impacted performance whatsoever. This was true for both my primary and secondary system. So because of that, you're safe to leave this on ultra. Ray traced reflections primarily affects the reflections that you're getting off of mirrors. You can see from this comparison here, the mirror's quality becomes increasingly good when increasing ray tracing quality. The performance penalty of this option is 17 to 19% on both of my systems, and even though the non-RT mirror reflections in this game are pretty atrocious to be honest, I would still argue that this option is not worth the hefty FPS penalty it introduces. Ray traced shadows with the ray tracing quality on ultra looks fantastic, as it actually allows further away objects to have a more diluted shadow, whereas objects closer to the ground produce a much sharper shadow. Unfortunately, this effect is only visible when setting the ray tracing quality to the ultra preset. However, this comes at a hefty 24 and 35% performance dip on the two systems that I tested this on. On the other hand, don't bother with the other presets, as those shadows look exactly the same as when not having ray trace shadows enabled in the first place. Finally, the ray tracing quality seems to have no effect on ray traced ambient occlusion. All have exactly the same performance penalty, and this option is a very expensive implementation of ambient occlusion, which introduces shadows around players or below benches, as you can see in this example shot. But frankly, I'm no big fan of this effect, so I always disable it anyways. Alright, so here are my recommendations for a high-end gaming system. Window mode full screen, render resolution 100%, anti-aliasing mode TA high, no upscaling, Nvidia Reflex low latency on, don't use VSync, don't cap your frame rate, use a field of view 0, enable depth of field, effects quality high, material quality ultra, fog quality ultra, sky quality ultra, foliage medium, post-processing medium, shadow quality ultra, texture quality ultra, view distance medium, and population quality ultra as well. Also, because of the very hefty FPS penalty of ray tracing, I tend to leave those disabled. With these settings, I'm losing roughly 19% on my primary system, and when comparing the visual fidelity of these tuned settings with simply running the game at ultra quality, we can see that both look almost identical. On the other hand, on a more mid-range gaming system, I would recommend full screen windowed, Nvidia DLLA as anti-aliasing mode. Test yourself whether Nvidia Reflex low latency on or disabled actually performs better, field of view 0, depth of field enabled, effects quality medium, material quality ultra, fog quality medium, sky quality ultra, foliage quality medium, post-processing keep it on low, shadow quality medium, texture quality medium, view distance you should keep on low, and population quality you can have on ultra. Definitely don't use ray tracing, and apply those settings. With my tuned settings for a more mid-range system, I'm losing roughly 16%, but if we compare the visual fidelity of the tuned settings to having the game all at low, you can see that the game looks much nicer. Now, all of these tests I have performed on these two different systems that I'm currently showing on screen right now, and if you also want to tune your game and want to figure out which kind of settings cause in-game stuttering, then definitely check out this video where I'm showing how to enable a frame time graph in your game in order to diagnose any issues. But with that, I'd like to thank you for watching, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.